Welcome to the video demonstration of the software requirement specification template from Adaptive Processes. The SRS template is one of the most crucial product in a software project, and hence this is an attempt to make users understand the template very well. In this video demonstration, we will take you through various tabs that is required to develop a good requirement specification template. To start with, we have a cover page which is indicating for which project it is created, what is the current document version number, the date of the current version, and a revision history. The reason we developed it in Excel compared to what normally companies do, which is the Microsoft Word template, because Excel has inherently many benefits in terms of associating, in terms of filtering. So later part, if a customer or a stakeholder is very particular about producing a word-based template, you may copy the same content into a word-based template. The next tab is index, where all the tabs have a direct link. So from here itself one can go to various modules, and from various modules one can come back. So for example, if we want to see a use case template, we just click on use case. So we go to the use case page, and if we click index, we come back to the same page. So these are the main sections that is present in the software requirements template. The very first tab is implicit requirements. It is an interesting addition to the software requirements template, because many times we have observed that there are certain inherent expectations in the client's mind which does not get expressed, because the client always feels that as a software development team or community, one would be aware of these features and will implement them. So the reason for us to develop this implicit requirements template is to make sure that such requirements are actually verified with the client. Say for example, in one of my earlier client engagements, I had found that the SMS integration was a key requirement which was not stated. But when the product went for user acceptance testing, the user simply refused to believe that a product was delivered without SMS integration. So the whole process again got delayed by about 3 months, because this expectation was not clarified in the beginning with the stakeholders. So the intent of developing these implicit requirements is to help the software engineering team and the business to come up with a list of commonly used functions or features that the users expect, and put them so that every time we develop a module, we check it out whether such a feature is needed or not needed. The next tab is the NFR checklist, which is a very comprehensive non-functional requirements checklist. So if you see, there are about 40 odd parameters mentioned here. Obviously in this template I will not be explaining each one of them. We would have a separate small video on explaining the NFR checklist, so please refer to that. Just to highlight few, like the audit and control requirements are basically meant for making sure that any changes to the database records are tracked properly. This is a very critical requirement in most of the financial services organizations, where the application user or the process owners would like to know each record, when was it updated, who updated it, and why it was updated. So those are the requirements of audit and control. Similarly, there are about 45 or 50 NFRs which has been listed in the template, which will be explained in another separate video. The next one is the requirements catalog. Some people call it as product backlog, some people can call it as something else like use case summary. So this is basically nothing but high level requirements placed in a particular format, so that the senior management gets a view of what is that the feature is being implemented. So if you view the words, it's interesting. Each of these descriptions begin with a verb, which is basically indicating the user is able to perform certain transaction. So you have a requirements ID, which is just a short name or a number. then a very brief description of the requirement, name and description. The criticality can be nice to have, should have, must have, or any other thing. Who is the user contact for the requirement? Benefit can be rated on a scale of 1 to 5, saying how much benefit business expects to get by implementing this. So we'll say the benefit is 3. The cost is basically the effort part required to implement this. Value index is nothing but benefit by cost, and this can be a criteria used to prioritize the requirements. Use case reference is nothing but if this is described in a particular use case, that you can give the name. So I'll say this is a login use case, and then whether the specification is done or not, so the value will be yes or no. Whether it is approved or not, yes or no. Whether it is implemented or not, you can indicate all of them here. So this is basically the product backlog or the use case summary used in various companies. Then the next tab is the requirements traceability matrix. The traceability matrix basically takes the requirement spec and aligns it to business case, like why this requirements is required, what is the value to business, or which business case it is trying to help. It may have subsequent requirements like the functional requirement, high level design reference, implementation reference, and test reference. The flow chart is simple process flow chart, which most of you may be aware how the process performs. Then the next, there is a tab for clarifications. Basically, whenever an SRS is being developed, obviously people would have clarifications on the SRS, which can be tracked in this tab. Then the use case. Typically for each use case we may develop this template, so there may be 1 or 2 use cases being handled within one module SRS, otherwise the tabs become too long. But it's, I mean, in case the project is not very large and you have just 6-7 use cases, then probably the same template can be used. The use case description again will come as a separate small video, because that's a topic by itself, so I'll not take it here. Then the screen layout. The screen layout is how the fields look like, how they are placed. This can be done using HTML or any other graphical interface available. There is also a summary layout, typically because in most business systems one has a detailed view and one has a summary view. Then the next tab is controls tab, which is a very crucial tab for capturing requirements at a very detailed level. Many business analysts and users have come back in the past and said, do we really need to capture at this level? I would suggest you do. Because the benefit of capturing it in detail is it gives an excellent clarity to the developers, and hence the subsequent disputes with business is extremely minimal if you have followed this template. So let me explain this template. The control name is nothing but how an object appears on an UI. What is the description of that control? What is the format, like whether it is a varchar, integer, date, anything like that? What is the size of the field that you need to capture? Many often I have found business analysts to be very stingy about size and running into trouble. So I would always request you to provide sufficient size so that in future the requirements to change the database is minimal. Whether the field is mandatory on screen or not, whether it is to be displayed or not. Here it is, actually it's not system generated, so I'll just keep it like this. And generally IDs are system generated, but otherwise descriptions aren't. Then whether it is a primary key or not. What is the on-screen length of the field, which is the pixel width. Then what is the height on screen, because sometimes you may like to give a bigger box for somebody to write something in detail. Whether it is editable or not. So for example, the description will be non-editable once you save it. Then we also have a requirement to specify whether it will be left aligned, right aligned, or center aligned. There can be a guideline for this, but it is still better to refer it in this designs document so that the developer makes it correct. if there are some validations applicable, like say for example the defect status will be linked to the lookup table. Also the ordering of the field, like say for example when we order the defects, we would like to put it by severity, which is very low to very high. Also remember that people tend to choose the very first lookup drop down the C, so be careful about it. Then foreign key reference I have already told. Whether you would like to set a default value, what are the lookup values that you want the developers to at least seed it during programming. Then what is the next control from where this will go. This is also very interesting to note that many times developers miss the tabbing sequence very often. And then if there are other fields dependent on the current field, so for example you may have a country field based on which the state field will get automatically refreshed. Then you can also write a field behavior, like so for example it's a save button, so you say on click save the data entered in the form. The next one is the interface and batch processes. So if your application has to interact with another system, so you can write the interface names and what is the data that needs to be interfaced. The printing requirements are basically required for very specific applications. How many copies have to be printed? Can you print duplicate? Can you print original second time? All those questions will be answered here. Then we also have a tab called list of reports, so where you basically give the report name, how often it is produced, who has access to the report, whether it can be downloaded, can be printed, if there are some filter criteria, what is the report layout name, all this can be mentioned here. The next one is like we had a form layout, the same way we have a report layout, because developers also need a very specific format to be provided for reporting. Then the security requirements of the application in terms of module, function, role, and what kind of access is provided. Then there is also a template for peer reviews, where if you have done a review of the SRS template, this can be captured, like in terms of who all reviewed the document, what all they discussed, and whether the review finally is accepted or conditionally accepted or rejected. And then finally there is a sign off checklist for business, where the business goes through this and then finally gives a sign off to the software development team. So this is what is a typical format of a software requirements template. Please feel free to add more to it in case your context demands it, but this has been our good experience with about 20 clients that we find this template to be very, very useful. Thank you for attending the video demonstration of the SRS template.